Star Trek vs. Star Wars. The Beginning by Darius Trent. Chapter 6. A warning, Captain. I'm detecting something strange near our position. Called out Horan from his station on the bridge. He had been sitting at his science station, trying to make sense of this hyperspace scanner that Commander Tapon had been explaining to him, and the physics of pushing a ship into subspace, when his console had gone off detecting a perimeter alert. Yes, what is it? Trent asked as he got up from his command chair to look at Horan's station. A small metallic object. Oh, wait a minute, it just vanished, answered Horan, looking slightly bewildered at this turn of events. I could almost swear there was something there. Where was the position of the object when you last saw it? Trent queried. It was roughly 10,000 kilometers away, replied Horan. Just inside visual range and far within our sensor range. Are there any objects in that area that could cloud our senses at that range? Asked Trent. There is a Class 4 comet in that general area, answered Horan. Comet Iva Alpha 7, currently in its trailing state. It will pass our location within 20 minutes. What's the status of the Devastator Tetona? Asked Trent. They appear to have called an additional 4 vessels to their position of the same design, answered Tetona. I'm detecting a continuous link between the Devastator and that comet. It's most likely that the object you found is from the Devastator, Horan, stated Trent, and they are using it right now to spy on us. That is a very likely case, concluded Horan. Based on our combat with them before, I think that their range is limited to roughly 100 kilometers, and they possess no computerized targeting system. It would be evident that they have to rely on easy-to-manufacture probes in order to get their way around. Tetona, have the Princess brought up here, ordered Trent. Put us on yellow alert and recommend that the Galway and the Crazy Horse do the same. Aye, sir, replied Tetona. He tapped a few buttons and after a few minutes, Princess Leia was on the bridge of the Arizona. I tell you what, this ship is more than good enough to survey. Whoa, commented Leia as she walked on the bridge, suddenly shocked at the size of it. The bridge of the Tantive is nowhere near the size of this bridge. Yes, it is, replied Trent. However, we have something more important than the layout of the ship. He gestured to one of the science stations at the back. We picked up a small metallic object a few minutes ago. Evidence shows that it's a probe of unknown design origin, evidently from the Devastator. The Devastator is communicating with the probe, and the probe is sending back a series of mathematical equations we intercepted. We can't figure out if it's a code of some sort, as it doesn't conform to any mathematical code used by our galaxy. Those aren't in code. What you're seeing is not a language of sorts, answered Leia. Those are hyperspace equations. So you're saying that the probe is merely telling the Devastator the fastest way it can get here? Asked Trent. I'm afraid so, replied Leia. And now there's 5 Star Destroyers here, they'll stop at nothing to destroy us and all the forces here. Captain, the Enterprise is signaling us, called out Tetona. They report a probe of unknown design appeared out of nowhere and scanned them. When they put a tractor beam on it, it exploded. What's their status? Asked Trent out of fear. The Enterprise was undamaged by the explosion, but says they'll be here in about 25 minutes, answered Tetona. They've also routed a Defiant class, the USS Moscow, to us, and she'll be here in 15 minutes. Is she fitted with a cloaking device? Asked Trent. As far as I can tell, the USS Moscow looks like it's one of only 4 Defiant class ships that can cloak, answered Tetona. Have her cloak and await instructions as soon as she gets here, ordered Trent. Leia, where do you reckon the Devastator would be at with its equations? It's a bit hard to tell from this point, but I'd say we've got another 20 minutes before they're right at our doorstep, replied Leia. Understood, decisively answered Trent, thinking on the spot for a few seconds. Tetona, take the ship to red alert. Tell the others to do so as well. We have evidence to believe that the Imperials are about to launch an assault on us. Signal Commander Aldrin and the rest of the command crew back here as well. Yes, sir, responded Tetona. He pressed a few buttons and quickly, the ship's interior darkened, the computer systems suddenly changed to a red-based color and a robotic klaxon noise echoed throughout the ship. "Do your ship's posses any fighters?" asked Leia out of curiosity. The USS Galway used to have fighters on board during the Dominion War, but they were reassigned to Starbase 75 after the war finished. Answered Trent. "We don't need 'em against their fighter anyway. I think their first attack on us made that clear." He walked back to his command chair, knowing the danger that was now posing against him. He'd seen his fair share of life or death scenarios in the past, but this one felt different somehow, almost as if it was wrong in a sense, that these ships should never have come into contact with one another. Nevertheless, he swore an oath as a Starfleet officer, and he was going to maintain that oath no matter what happened. On the Devastator, things were just as busy. With gunnery crews returning to their stations in preparation for the upcoming attack, engineering crews quickly slapping together last-minute repairs in the hopes that the ship would not be hit as heavily as it was in the first engagement now that it had 4 other ships defending it. With the usual amount of Imperial self-confidence, the crew genuinely believed that it would succeed and live up to the Emperor. On the bridge, Darth Vader looked down on his crew as he wheezed to breathe. His charred and broken smile hid behind his black mask as he thought to himself, "There's no way they'll survive this attack." After all, no force in the entire galaxy, not even the rebels, had managed to survive a flight of 3 Star Destroyers. Surely these more advanced ships would be no match for 5. And yet as he thought this, he also began to doubt their chances for success. Could they end up being no match for these ships? Were we even meant to come across these ships, or were their paths interlinked by the Force? He wasn't sure, but the Force made him feel as if they shouldn't even be here in the first place. Nevertheless, he had his orders. He was to destroy the rebels and capture the Arizona for study purposes. "My lord, oh never mind, it was a mistake," called out the officer currently manning the probes. "What did you say?" coldly queried Vader, his wheezed breathing sending chills of fear down the officer's neck. "Oh, it's nothing," quickly answered the officer. The probe detected another blockade runner-sized starship join him temporarily, but then it disappeared as soon as it appeared. I think it was a sensor ghost. It had better be, or your life and everyone else's on this ship is in your hands. "Yes, my lord," quietly replied the officer. He shrank back into his seat as Vader walked over to Kerala. "Are we ready to proceed yet?" asked Vader. "Engine room reports hyperspace course and coordinates to be precise, Captain," answered Kerala. "Without too much effort, this skirmish can be over in a matter of minutes." "Do not underestimate the capabilities of our enemy," cautioned Vader. "You know the capabilities of just one of their vessels." "Yes, my lord," replied Kerala. "Regardless of which, we are ready to go now." "Very well then," calmly replied Vader. "I see no reason not to continue. Engage hyperdrive." With a flick of a few buttons, the ship and its 4 counterparts entered hyperspace for a few seconds, following the carefully constructed waypoints made by the probe, before arriving at their destination within a few seconds. The Arizona and its counterparts were now visible. They had all turned around now, and were all facing towards the Star Destroyers, with the Tantive IV hiding behind the Arizona for cover. "My lord, they are hailing us," reported the officer at communications. "Put then on the viewer," ordered Vader. He turned around to look at the view screen at the rear of the bridge to once again stare at Captain Darius Trent. "I'd be quick to leave if I were you," stated Trent. "You know what happened the last time we faced off. And such is the reason we have returned," smartly replied Vader. "Surrender your vessel and the rebels to Yar immediately and the other ships will be allowed to leave unharmed." "I'm afraid the word surrender doesn't exist in my vocabulary," answered Trent. "And the rebels have claimed temporary political asylum within the Federation, which they have been given." "Surely my offer is far better than yours," prodded Vader. "We get your ship and you get to keep living. We'd rather die than give ourselves over to you," Trent defiantly stated. "Very well then. You leave me with no choice but to take your ship by force," declared Vader. He closed the channel and the first battle of the Iver system began.